Okay, Neil, do you want to start now or shall we just give it a few more minutes? Okay, then we can start now. Okay. Uh, okay. Hi, Niti. Hi, everyone. Hi, everyone online. Good evening. So, my name is Randolph. I'm from the Environmental Action Society. Welcome to the webinar on Happy Your Say on Climate Change, Help Shape Malaysia's Future. Okay, so this event has been organized through an alliance of concerned civil society organizations comprising of the CSO Platform for Reform, the MCCG, the Malaysian Climate Change Group, Beach, Biodiversity, Environment, Agroecology, Climate Change, and Habitat, and the Malaysian CSO SCG Alliance. Okay. The purpose of this webinar is generally to inform the public on the ongoing drafting of the climate change bill by the Malaysian government. And the bill is actually a significant milestone for Malaysia's climate change agenda. But of course, we will have multiple implications and of course, in terms of the needs, and also needs to be developed holistically. Okay. The purpose of this seminar is actually to inform the general public in terms of what is happening. And then at the end, what we expect is that we would like to encourage everyone to either individually or as a group to provide feedback directly to the government on your thoughts and concerns on this important bill. At the end of the day, of course, everyone deserves to have your own say on what could be a long-term implication in terms of our climate action for the country. Okay. If you do have any questions, those who are joining on Facebook, you can actually put in a comment in the chat box, and then we will address those questions in the Q&A at the end of the session. Okay, so without further ado, let me just start. First, let me invite Kyo Jiao, who is the chair of the Bar Council's Environment and Climate Change Committee, as well as the co-chair of the Malaysian CSO SCG Alliance. Jayao is a sustainable development lawyer who has been working on environmental justice for quite a while now. And he will start off the session by giving an overview of the proposed climate bill, just to keep everyone in terms of what is actually the concept of the bill, as far as we understand, and that just to kick off the process. Okay. So without further delay, let me invite Jayao to actually start off. You may share your slides. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much, Randolph. And hello, everyone. It's wonderful to see quite a number of people who have actually joined us. And thank you very much for your interest. And it's very encouraging. Yeah. So now in my short time I have with you, I will only have 3 slides for everyone. All right. And we will just briefly talk about what is this thing called this climate change bill, or also known as RUUPIN. So here's my first slide. I'm going old school, yeah, because I think that would be better than, but I realize now that if I blur my background, then you can't see. So now, what is RUUPIN? Essentially, RUUPIN stands for Rang Undang-Undang Perubahan Iklim Negara. And in English, it's the National Climate Change Bill. So RUUPIN is actually being drafted right now by the Malaysian government. Yeah, and as part of any lawmaking process, and especially for this piece of law that is profoundly important, the government is actually seeking a public consultation, asking for everyone's input. Yeah. So what is this Rang Undang-Undang that has been published and asked? So this is the document. It's not very long. Yeah. It's just now, the reason why this document is not very long, this consultation paper that is actually been released by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability, is this is not the actual climate change bill. All right. The government has not yet shared the actual climate change bill, or RUUPIN, for feedback on its section by section. So instead, they've published this, what you could call a framework. Yeah. So this is the drafting framework for RUUPIN. So they've published this, and I encourage, we are here to encourage all of you to actually look at this document. Now, it's, as a lawyer, I will tell you it's not a very scary read. It's not very difficult. Yeah. Let's actually briefly, I want to just direct your attention to three parts that are just to get you familiarized. All right. So the best place to start is actually the table of contents. And the important thing is actually look at introduction. All right. And then I will ask afterwards, we'll very quickly go through the principles, right, and the framework of this draft act. And then the third part is actually the proposed sections, how they're thinking about arranging the act. Yeah. And then in the last part, see, it's not very long. So the last part is actually Appendix A. That is literally the form template for where you actually put in your comments. All right. So in the introduction section is where the government is telling us that, okay, intro section, the government is telling us that in developing this climate change bill, the government commits to an all-of-nation approach. That means it wants everyone to give their inputs, everyone to use what they know in their local context, in their respective sectors, fields, specialty, how their lives are concerned and arranged, and in inputting into the contents of RUUPIN. Because RUUPIN is going, afterwards when we go into part C, we will see that RUUPIN will touch almost all aspects of our lives for immediate future and into the long term, right? So this determines the future of your children as well, right? Now, what it says, that's why you must have an all-of-nation approach, because everyone must be on board. Everyone's input is really important. Here, literally, it says it seeks feedback from all government agencies. That means it's not just the environmental ministry, yeah? All agencies, and not just the federal government, state governments, local governments, government agencies. So everyone's feedback. It also needs member of public's input as well. Okay, so you will see that here it says it also invites input from private sector. That means businesses, companies, big or small. Big and small is very important. The big ones will be affected in particular ways. The small ones will be affected also, but in particular ways, in very different ways. So, and then it says NGOs as well. So NGOs can be like our friends here, WWF Malaysia, but NGOs can also be your PIBG. It can also be your school society. It can be your morning exercise club. Yeah. So all NGOs as well, because it's going to affect all of you in different ways, but ways that only you will know. That's why they want to hear from you. All right. So that's the intro part of the consultation paper, where it says that it wants everyone is encouraging and asking everyone. So in that sense, you are invited to actually officially invited to give input. And we are here to tell you that you and us and everyone must give our input. All right. So as we give the input, how do we give our input? All right. So just now I pointed, there's a form at the back that gives input on what the sections are, at least the parts that they're going to talk about. But how do we give input? Well, here's a very simple general way. One is, let's look at the principles under part B, the principles that is going to guide how the government is going to draft RUUPIN, the climate change bill. All right, the principles and the objectives. So I suggest you think about the principle, you look at the principles, you look at the objectives, you see whether it covers your situation, your concerns, and also you might also have some solutions in terms of some of the impacts of climate change, and see whether it enables those solutions, all right? Or if it doesn't. So apply the principles, all right? Think about the coverage and see whether it includes you, all right? If it leaves you out, then you say, hey, don't forget about this situation. Don't forget about us here. Here doesn't just mean geographical location, although it includes geographical location, right? So you might stay in a house where in the last 4 years, suddenly there's a lot of flooding, right? So now you're saying, hey, I'm very concerned if climate change is going to bring more rain, more extreme weather, my house is going to get flooded. Now, but locality and local concerns is not just physical. It can also be that specific area. You could be a young person who is thinking as becoming a job seeker in a year or two, and you're thinking about what kind of careers and how come the things that I want to study, I don't see them becoming widely available. Whereas there's a lot of what is available is all the traditional jobs. But I'm very keen to be part of the climate change solution. And how come the education sector is not meeting what I want and what I hope to have? Speak up about policy around shaping education that would cater to you as you grow into a change agent for society, right? If you're a caregiver, you will have concerns about, hey, I need these kinds of infrastructure to be consistently available to take care of people. All right. When during the floods, 2021, 2022, wow, the medicine cannot come, or we cannot go to the hospital, or we cannot get treatment, or the physiology, the person doing physio for us cannot come, right? Or if you're a parent of a child with rare disease, say, for example, spinal muscular atrophy, right? And you need to have ready access to maybe a coughing machine because your child has got weak respiratory muscles. He cannot cough for himself when he has an incident, right? So if 4 days of floods and you cannot access a coughing machine for your child, it is a life and death situation. So how do you ensure that these kinds of situations, are thought about so that we are more resilient against them? Now, there are many, many other things. I'm just giving a bit of examples. Now, I can, at this point, maybe I want to encourage you to type in what kind of hat are you wearing, as you are thinking about this, RUUPIN, as a mother, as a teacher, as a student, as an insurance agent, as an investor, as a homeowner, as a foreigner who's working in Malaysia, thinking about your access to other services, So type in what kind of role, how are you looking this from your perspective? What kind of hat would you describe that? And of course, each of you are going to be wearing multiple hats. So I encourage you to do that. So look at the principles. We've seen the principles. Now we're just going to quickly run through what does the provisions actually cover. Yeah. And I'm not going to actually run through the many pages. I'm going back to the table of contents, and we're going to see now that it actually covers very fundamental, important things for what we call climate governance. That means provisions that would enable our government to structure and restructure itself so that the right government bodies can make the necessary things. They have to make decisions. They have to get different government agencies, state governments, for example, to come together. They will get representatives from private sector, from civil society to come together, make decisions, understand problems, come up with solutions. So there'll be structural things in here, and there'll be things about where the fund budget is going to come from, right? And then there will be enabling transformation in the economy, right? So you see, climate change is also about cutting greenhouse gas emissions so that as a country, we also don't contribute to the carbon emissions. And also we want to transform our economy because businesses that are carbon intensive, businesses that are still in the old type of economy are not going to be welcomed in the markets. In foreign markets already, there are changes. So supply chains where our local businesses are part of global supply chains, and where overseas, the big companies that are hiring our contractors here are having expectations about what is their carbon footprint, for example. So there'll be transformations in the economy as well, right? And regulating how business is is done, there will be provision here about regulating emissions, right? So there might be a cost of pollution, for example, that will become a cost element to you if you have vehicles, if you have factories. Yeah, so you're going to also wonder, is this going to give rise to cost of living and other things? Yeah. Now, other parts of to take care of, not just on cutting carbon emissions, there's also changes that are really important for the country to become more resilient and to adapt to the negative impacts of climate change. All right, the negative impacts of climate change will be natural disasters, floods, droughts, interruption to our water supply. Now, those are the negative impacts that we are beginning to hear of, that we are already experiencing. There'll also be negative impacts from the earlier mentioned structural changes to the economy, right? Those economic changes are also going to be effects, yeah, adverse impacts of climate change to be in that whole basket as well. Now, there will be other things where when we cannot adapt or become more resilient to these disasters, we will then we have to fix things, right? So like when roads are flooded and the bridges are destroyed, we need a lot of money to fix them, right? So we can see, yes,
Sorry,
timing.
so you have probably just 20 seconds more before
20 seconds more. So
yeah.
why is it very important for all of you to get involved? Now, first thing is, everyone has a right to a safe, clean, and healthy environment. All right. So relating to all those potential impacts and impacts that you're already feeling, you have that right, and that right is a constitutional right. Everyone also has a right to be safe from the negative impacts of climate change. All right. And then if where Malaysia is transforming into a better economy, where we are pursuing growth as we must follow sustainable development, all right, principles where no one is left behind. All right. And so I will stop here. And the last call is, hey, you must, do your best, because we certainly can do a lot and we are not alone. So find your groups and mobilize, get organized, and take part in providing your comments and inputs. Thanks so much. Back to you, Randolph.
Thanks, Jae-Yong. Right now, as usual, I have an internet problem. I'll have to restart my PC and come back in. But before I go, let me move on to the next session. So I'll introduce everyone. We have 4 presentations next, okay? I'll introduce everyone, then I'll leave for one, and I'll come back in, okay? Of course, the first presentation is on nature, climate, and people by 2 representatives from WWF Malaysia. So we have Muhammad Ubaid Mohsin, who is an analyst on climate change and environmental policy, as well as Nur Alisha Rihan, who is an economic analyst. So they will take the first presentation on nature, climate, and people. The next presentation after that will be on climate change and indigenous people of Malaysia. And this is by Adrian Lasbar, who's actually a well-known indigenous rights advocate. Okay, he is the executive director of the Right Energy Partnership with Indigenous Peoples, and also the co-founder of Tony Bong, a social enterprise developing community-based renewable energy systems. After Adrian is done, we'll actually move on to Selvan Segaran, who's actually a volunteer with Greenpeace in Malaysia. He will speak on the topic of climate change, urban environment, and of course, the impact of more development projects. And finally, we'll have a representative from the Malaysian youth delegation to give a different dimension, that is on empowering youth and shaping our climate future. So the Malaysian youth delegation will be represented by Shamita Masila Sami, okay, who's actually the coordinator for the Climate Adaptation Working Group at MyWD. Okay, so first of all, let me invite Muhammad Ubaid and Nur Alisha from WWF. So you may share your slides and begin. Just a note, of course, we have a short time, so if you can, you have about 6 to 7 minutes to complete your presentation before the next person starts. Okay, thank you.
Hello, everyone. And let me share my screen. What presentation? Okay. First off, thank you, Randolph and the team for hosting this webinar. And thank you for the audience who putting aside their Friday evening precious time to be with us today. So today, me and my colleague Ubai will be presenting where we will be seeing how the actions that we take, that we want to take to address climate change has actually impacted the local community, especially the next. So let us off. I'm gonna start talking about first case study, which is in Kudat Sabah silica mining. So in this case, the silica mined from the Kudat area is said to be used to produce solar glass, which is a crucial component for solar panels in our effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So the first question is asked, right? So Bangau Beach, which is also part of Tun Mustafa Park, Malaysia's largest marine protected area for biodiversity and conservation, and to support sustainable marine resources for locals. The areas and locals face pollution risks and economic impacts, such as limited access to beach for fishing and foraging, and health impacts from air pollution. We have also been warned by several experts about how mining increases vulnerability of coastal ecosystems and nearby communities. So I will present down my presentation. I will explain how, in our effort to reduce emission or our greenhouse gases, we also would also have impact on the communities in the area. So the second question we can ask is, what is happening, right? So in this case study, the 2 billion ringgit silica mine promises jobs to locals with minimal environmental impact. And as I mentioned before, the silica is intended for solar glass production. And a large section of the beach is gated for safety, and a jetty was constructed for street transport of the mine minerals. However, for the third question you can ask is, what was planned and what is happening on ground? After more than 2 years of operation, the promises to alleviate local poverty and minimize environmental impact have not yet been fulfilled. Instead, local fishermen have lost access to large areas of the beach, now blocked by gates. Only a few locals have been employed by the company, and the once beautiful turtle nesting beach is now mostly deserted, affecting marine turtle conservation in Tun Mustafa Park. So I'm going to show you the first picture here is main parts of the gated, what was it again? Part of the gated jetty in Bangau Beach used to be the landing sites for local fishermen. And the second picture would be a sign up put up by the villagers on Bangau Beach, voicing out their disagreement, saying that they're not intruders, but Bangau Beach is actually their ancestral area for foraging since generations before. So that would be the end from my part. For the second case study, I will give it to Ubai.
All right. Thank you so much, Elisha. So different a little bit from Elisha, we want to look at the impact side and how nature is important in addressing the impact of climate change. We want to explore briefly on the importance of nature in providing the service to mitigate negative effect of climate change. So I want to bring you guys to the second case study, which is on Ulu Muda Forest Complex, or easily known as UMFC. So the same question we want to ask, what is happening? So we are seeing logging in UMFC, which it's been done to generate income for the state. Before that, before I forget, we want to introduce a little bit on Ulu Muda Forest Complex. It is situated in Kedah, and Ulu Muda it's also acting as a water catchment area that supplies water for the largest paddy granary in Malaysia. It caters 40 to 50% of national rice production. And apart from that, it also supplies water to industries, commercial and domestics, and in 3 states, namely Kedah, Perlis, and also Penang. And there are also multiple dams that were being built in the area that were created to enable double cropping of paddy. So we can see it is very crucial for our national food security in Malaysia. So we want to go to the first question: what is happening on the ground? So we are seeing logging in UMFC, which it's been done to generate income for the state. We are seeing more extreme weather patterns have been occurring in the area, resulting in more flooding and drought events. We also see water quality and quantity in the dams and rivers are also badly affected. And sadly, we are seeing paddy production and paddy farmers' livelihood are impacted by this more frequent flooding and also prolonged droughts that we are seeing right now, especially if you go through the news, you can see that. And this is a very alarming case because Kedah is known as the rice bowl of Malaysia. So again, I want to highlight that it is very important for the food security in Malaysia. And the region, the whole region, has been also experienced mud floods, which is very bad, causing damage to infrastructure, homes, and even lives due to the logging upstream. So we go to the second question: why is it happening? So it happens because we have seen more extreme weather patterns due to climate change. We have seen days where it is wetter during the rainy season. We have seen days where it's too dry during the dry season. And the reason why we want to highlight the importance of Ulu Muda Forest Complex, because forests regulate water cycle, allowing water to be dispersed in a more natural way. And again, I want to highlight also about the importance of Ulu Muda Forest Complex as a water catchment area, which is very important for this purpose. Activities that can disrupt this natural rules like logging and mining, can disrupt natural water dispersion, and this can worsen the impact of climate change. So logging in the MMC, it's very bad for the climate change. So as you guys can see, the first picture I want to bring to you guys is the Muda Lake. As you can see, the water is very low. And I've seen like a previous image of the lake before it's it's in this state. It's very pristine, very nice. The water is it's abundance of water, but as you can see in this image, because of climate change, the low level of water it's alarming for us. And the second picture I want to bring you, I'm sorry, it's a bit blurry, but it's taken from the NST. It's a condition of a house after a mud flood. So as you can see, logs have been swept away from upstream to downstream, and you can see that the damage it's been done to the houses in the local communities are very bad. And I've heard that a couple of lives have been lost due to the floods. So it is very concerning for us to see like these adverse impacts of climate change. So I think that's all from my part. I guess I pass it to Randolph. Thank you everyone for listening to us.
Yeah, thank you. I'm still sorting out my PC, but of course, without further ado, let me invite the next speaker, which is Adrian, and he'll give a talk in terms of indigenous people.
Thank you,
Yes,
Randolph.
Yes,
Yeah.
go ahead, please.
Thank you very much. So let me share my screen for my presentation. Let's share. Okay. Can see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Just to make sure. It's a bit raining hard at my place now because of the typhoon. So hopefully my internet stays steady. So very good evening, everyone. So I'm very happy to be part of this discussion, and thank you so much for the organizers to provide us some room to bring some perspective from the indigenous communities in Malaysia. And let me start by just going through that, providing a little bit of overview and how climate change important, and why this Undang-Undang is also important to be inclusive, especially for minority communities and those are very much voiceless in the discussion of climate change. As we know, the indigenous peoples Malaysia is collectively known as Orang Asal, which consists of the Orang Asli in Peninsula and then Sabah Sarawak groups. And it's so important that we have the lifeline of this community is so much depend on the forests, rivers, and the coastal areas where we live in. And in fact, the adat or our custom are very much intertwined on the land and the resources around our kawasan wilayah adat, and we live upon the land. So climate change will definitely have a direct impact towards the environment that we live in and the resources that we rely on. So meaning to say that it's going to have a very adverse impact towards the community. And indigenous communities we look at the discussion of community climate change is the most vulnerable society because the close proximity to the resources, but also the over reliance of the nature. And the worst part is like, even though the indigenous community is the most vulnerable, yet the community has almost contribute nothing to cause climate change. That is the biggest irony on the whole climate change thing. And I think it is also very hard in many countries that indigenous communities are also often left out in the discussion about the law and how the climate change is being look at, and what are the strategies towards mitigation and adaptation. As we know and also shared by our previous presenters, we can already see there's already a lot of impact with regards to the changing environment, especially when we have really already seen very clear that a lot of communities have been displaced because of rampant flooding and also rising sea levels. In Sabah, where I work with many fisher folks that live within mangrove area, the houses are often been now washed away every time there's a storm surge happens, and these are actually getting more and more serious, even though they're already moving away from the coastline. And also because of the longer drought and also the extreme weather condition, the agriculture product or resources that they rely on are really affected because they loss of crops because of flood or dry season. And the flooding is often affecting a lot of our communities, and some crop failures that happened last year and this year have shown that some communities are even starving to the extent they don't have enough food because communities are still very much subsistence, and what they have that they can provide on the table is actually how much they can produce that they can plant on their land. And a lot of these crop failures have created, almost to the extent of famine. Of course, we are trying to help mitigate that by providing some food assistance, but in the long run, it's going to be much worse. And we have seen many examples, for example, in Kelantan, where the floods that happened in Kelantan have devastated a lot of communities. So does the many communities, especially the Dusun community that lives along the river, like Kinabatangan, Segama, have been complaining and disrupted a lot of their crop, especially those who are still doing traditional rice farming, because these are area that is unirrigated. If you have irrigation system, at least there is something you can do when there's not enough water. But in communities where there's no irrigation, very poor infrastructure, they are much more vulnerable when it comes to climate change. And little is actually been about coastal communities, and in Sabah there's a huge population of Bajau Laut, and also Bajau Ubian that really stays in goes fishing every day, and with more storm coming in, meaning to say more less time that they can go out to the sea to collect or to go for fishing, and this is really um, a big issue. And we have seen a lot of also problem after each storm. There is a problem with coral reef being damaged, and these have shown decline in fish population, especially the coastal area. For the Kadazan Dusun community, especially those near Kinabalu highlands, so the climate have already changed, and a lot of the crops that used to grow in higher altitude doesn't grow that well anymore. So meaning to say they have to go further up, and meaning to say they have to open new areas. So these are also contribute to this deforestation, and these are something that it's very concerning, because we don't want deforestation, but at the same time they have no choice but to open up new area, because the condition that they used to plant this crop can no longer support that because of the change of weather and also the temperature. Um, and I think one of the question is like, in order to mitigate climate change, we are talking about energy transition. Say renewable is good, but it's actually creating a new problem for indigenous communities, because large scale renewable energy projects like large dams and solar farms is also going to take more land, and indigenous people's land are being taken. You can see many communities have already been displaced by large dams in Sarawak, and we have seen also looking at Nenggiri and few other area in peninsula that is being targeted for hydro dams development, and these are actually creating new problems. And mining is another problem, because as we transition towards a new form of energy, we need new types of minerals, critical minerals such as rare earth, silica sand, which have been shared earlier. And when indigenous communities or company come in to mine in this area, there's no free, prior, and informed consent. It just bulldoze the approval, and even when they start protesting, people are getting arrested and even prosecuted. For example, the community, the Rungus community in Andabangao that was shared earlier. I myself was involved in the case litigation, because the women that was protesting for actually for the just clearly to say that they're not happy with the project, they were arrested, and they've been prosecuted. So I'd just like to um, go quickly on this, because what we need to see in the Rang Undang-Undang is to have an inclusive solution. It's not talking about how to mitigate, but what are the more adaptation strategy that is able to put communities in the front, in a better condition. So free, prior, and consent needs to be there. And then also make sure that there's benefit sharing in energy projects, and also making sure that indigenous people's knowledge are also taken into account when we come to providing what are the solution. So I think that's all for now. Thank you so much for this opportunity, and I move on, and I pass to the next speaker. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to Selvan, who'll give the next presentation on climate change, urban environment, and more development. Selvan, please go ahead, and thank you for joining us. Your mic is muted, Selvan. Okay.
Right. Hi.
Okay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Right. My name is Selvin. I'm going to talk about, is the screen shown big?
Yep.
Big screen. Okay, that's good. Okay, I'm going to be talking about climate change, urban environment, and with the effects of more development projects that is going on. Okay, so right? Just briefly, as other speakers have talked about it also, what is causing climate change are really human activities. For example, burning fossil fuels, destructions of ecosystem under the sea because of deep sea mining, and huge trawling or fishing methods, and deforestation, and many other activities. The climate change that we readily see, and some of us might not be seeing it, are examples are extreme weather events, air quality issues, infrastructure challenges, and public health concerns. These are only some of it. For this one, it's just an example of what the land, forest land that we have lost over the years. You can see the comparison in Peninsular Malaysia from 1990 to 2019. There is a drop in approximately 760 football field size of forest lost, which leads to, this is an example of transboundary haze time, a picture taken during the transboundary haze, where we would have witnessed it. Some of us would have realized it, and some of us would have children who were not sent to school also, just to show you examples. And we would have witnessed the normal rate of during haze, we faced a lot more medical issues or struggles. For example, headaches, more coughing, more people getting sick. Right. Which I am trying to tie it back to why we as people who are living in KL or Selangor, which is an urban area affected, we can tie it to the process of building construction, where the sites is selected by the developers, the environmental impact assessment is done, the forest area clearing, the destruction of forest is done, the road construction is done, the construction phase, and the landscaping. Okay, how development projects can worsen the current situation that we are already facing? Lots of flood, lots of landslides that are happening, even the one that we have heard this month from Taman Melawati. So when more and more developments happen, we living in a area where it is congested or very focused and concentrated with multiple buildings, the urban heat island effect happens, where we take in a lot of heat and the heat is trapped. So we face a lot more dry seasons or heat. Even recently, we are facing the regular temperature of 32 to 35 degrees Celsius even now. But also we are facing a lot of rain. So that is also one of the impacts. One of the things that can impact our livelihood or our situation in urban area. The increase in greenhouse gas due to a lot more cars, which ties into the widening or increasing in the number of vehicles and highways. It contributes to worsening of the already worsening situation. As I've talked about earlier, the population density, 60% and more of the people are populated in KL and Selangor because of job opportunities, and hence we have a lot more buildings and structures where we live in. So when we are affected, for example, with flood, a lot more people are affected, and losses of life can happen because a lot more people are concentrated here. We are also facing infrastructure damage, where some of us might have be part of the people involved with the damage, and some of us would have heard about it. Just for us to take it in that there are people around us that are affected by climate change, and also the development projects that are worsening it, from breathing to drinking to seeing health issues. These are just some of the examples that we in our daily life face. We should really think about it and also take it in the consideration to take a look at the Rang Undang-Undang, the climate change bill, that we can all see and comment on it. I urge you to do that and invite your friends to do that also. That's from me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Selvan. Okay, just a note, if you do have any questions and joining us on Facebook Live, you can post that in the comments and then we can take it up during the question and answer. Okay, then finally, let me invite the last speaker, Shamita from Malaysia Youth Delegation. So without further ado, you can proceed, Shamita. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my slides.
Sure.
Can you see the slides?
Yes, we can see. That's fine.
Yeah, okay. Hi, everyone. So I'm Shamita from the Malaysian Youth Delegation. So I work on co-leading the adaptation working group. And today I'm just going to be talking a bit about how youth participation can be manifested through this RUUPIN bill, and why we need to participate as young people as well in shaping our climate policies and climate governance. So briefly, just about MYD, we are a voluntary-based civil society organization made up of young people, and we all have an interest in climate policies and climate advocacy. So we play a two-part role, that is to represent Malaysia's local youth climate movement, as well as raise awareness of climate policies among Malaysians. And our visions are sort of building youth expertise, representing Malaysia, and building partnerships locally, regionally, and internationally. So just briefly about our initiatives, I just want to highlight more on the education and youth empowerment side of things, because that's kind of where the capacity building comes in. And this is where we can really see the impacts of how teaching each other and learning from others about climate policies helps in, first of all, expanding our knowledge on what we need and what we should demand for and what we should be entitled to, which can lead to us actually being more participative in these consultation initiatives. And then we also have conferences. So we organize conferences ourselves, such as the Malaysian Local Conference of Youth, but we also attend local and international conferences to kind of connect our experiences as young Malaysians dealing with climate crisis, along with others from international organizations. Okay, so just briefly, what can youth participation look like? This is not meant to be prescriptive, but it's more of just to describe how we implement things at MYD, and hopefully it can give you some idea, or you can kind of look beyond this as well. But I think one of the main things that is really helpful is getting organized. Just using my experience in MYD, as an organization, we are a bunch of different people from different areas. So not all of us are climate experts, but we have this interest in climate action, and we can bring in our different expertise, which I think is really, really useful in seeing the intersections that climate policies can have, and how it's literally quite cross-cutting across transport, health, well-being, and etc. So I think working in that kind of diverse environment can help us in learning more from others as well. And it can just be more mobilizing and empowering. And obviously organizing, it comes in various forms. It's not just like through how MYD is set up, but it can be in your local communities, in your schools, universities, etc. And this brings me to my next point, which is about upskilling and learning from each other, which I think is where a lot of empowerment can come from. Because with knowledge, that's how you can know what you need and what you should ask for. And for example, in this case, from the government. And finally, it's about contributing to consultative initiatives. And this is where I'll be talking a bit more about the RUUPIN and how we can participate as young people, and why we should be including our contributions as well. So I'm not going to explain too much about the RUUPIN since that has been covered earlier, but I just want to stress that this is one of the instances where we can have a potentially public-driven legislative framework if it's implemented well, where if they actually integrate our suggestions. And for that to happen, we also need to suggest. So that's why this is quite important, especially because climate policies affect literally a lot of, like almost every aspect of our lives. And so it's important that we get involved in suggesting and submitting inputs. So this is briefly the expected impact of the RUUPIN, especially within like the youth context. And simply put, it's more of like the potential this act can have for young people. Firstly, it can promote accountability measures, basically. So it allows for more concrete climate change policies, which means that we can hold people accountable for the decisions they make, including taking action against those who go against the Climate Act's policies. And through youth participation, the RUUPIN can institutionalize youth's concerns and interests within a legal framework, which makes it easier for them to be held accountable as well for these areas. And to build on this point, the RUUPIN also has the potential to be a comprehensive framework for addressing climate change by considering different dimensions, such as, first of all, young people, but also gender, indigenous communities, and disability justice. These are all contingent, obviously, on us making the suggestions as well as how they integrate it. So this is where like youth participation is very, very important. And we kind of need to start going away from the, but what can I do type of like mindset and look more on how these different areas can be, we need to consider basically these different areas as part of our lived experience with experiencing the climate crisis, as well as how climate policies will govern us. So first of all, youth participation in climate policies is really important just because it has a direct impact on our lives and on our futures, careers, etc. It will literally govern us, you know. But the thing is, we are quite underrepresented in policy spaces. And so it's where initiatives like this, which invite us to contribute, should be taken seriously so that there's a higher likelihood of policies that represent youth perspectives and interests and are considerate of our futures as well. Young people are also disproportionately impacted by climate change effects, and these include disasters with stress as well and climate anxiety, as well as the likelihood of being displaced by climate impacts. There's also increased health risks among children, as well as impacts on access to education because of climate disasters. So it's really, really important that all of these concerns are reflected in the policies that are usually made by not young people. And then to tie all of these together, there's also this growing recognition of the need to use evidence for policymaking. And young people, we have the unique like lived experience of being young at a time when climate change is at its worst. And so we've experienced it for a significant portion, if not all our lives. And especially as well, I just want to highlight that a lot of young people that are experiencing this are too young to even be able to contribute to this. For example, our younger siblings. So we need to be able to represent their kind of concerns and interests as well. And so these are all very valuable forms of evidence that we can provide lawmakers to ensure that their policies are comprehensive and address our needs adequately. Because not all of us are involved in policymaking spaces, so we need to build solidarity to actively participate in alternative ways to influence policymaking. And finally, participation in these kinds of processes can make us more proactive and foster the sense of responsibility for our own communities. And it can make us more engaged in issues we face within our own communities, which can be really empowering. Just to quickly flag that there's this resource, because all of this can be quite a daunting thing to consider, especially if you're not within the policymaking space or if you've just not even heard of like climate change policies, etc. So Climate Action Malaysia have actually produce really like a wealth of resources to help you navigate this process. So I'd highly recommend checking out their Instagram or their website to see what information you might need before you submit your suggestions. And to close, RUUPIN submissions are just one of the many, many ways you can engage in climate policies in action. We are entitled to speak up and be heard by our government on matters that can affect us. So participation does not have to look a certain way, but we encourage you to look beyond your institutions as well, within your own communities, and start small and engage with people, etc. But also try to provide your experiences and perspectives with this new proposed climate change bill. Thank you.
So thank you, Shamita. Okay, so actually we've just gone through 4 presentations very quickly in terms of the different aspects of climate change. But the reality is actually, even what has been covered by the first presentation just now is just a tip of the iceberg in terms of different types of aspects of climate change. But we're not here to talk about that today. Actually, what we'd like to talk about is how can you actually provide feedback to the development of the climate change bill for Malaysia. Again, I just want to stress that, of course, it's a very important milestone for the country. This actually is our inaugural bill related to climate change at a national level. And right now, of course, there is an ongoing process to provide feedback to the government. There is a deadline which is coming soon, but of course, we've actually tried to postpone that deadline. So actually, to give some a bit background on how to actually provide feedback, I'll invite Tamoli to actually give what she has done, or how she has organized herself and her groups to actually respond to the development of this climate change bill. Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you so much,
Sure.
Randolph. Let me just start sharing my screen. Okay. Okay, can you guys see this?
We can see. Maybe you want to make it a slightly bigger, just for the benefit.
Oh, hold on. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is not a presentation slide, but rather sharing of resource. But thank you so much, Randolph, and also thank you to the organizers. Thank you so much, Lavanya, for inviting me. And also, hi everyone, I'm Kimberly, and I volunteer with Youth United for Earth, or youth for short. So we are a youth-led grassroots movement where we mobilize youth for environmental actions through local storytelling. We amplify campaigns, and also we do environmental advocacy. So a couple of days ago, a few of us at Youth, we convened a study group session where we tried to identify some of the gaps in the proposed climate change bill. And also we tried to use 2 resources as references. So one of it mainly is the, so it's this one, so it's the consultation paper that was publicized by NRES, the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. I think Jaya did a very good job kind of going through the document. And so how do you send in your responses is at the last page here. As you can see, it's on page 14. So there are different sections here, section A, B, and C. I think C, to us, we felt like youth was a little bit more heavier than the other 2 sections, which might be of importance to all of us who are looking to send our responses, because this is where we can look at what are the areas that are lacking, comparing our concerns and what has been proposed in RUUPIN, and also how we can provide recommendations and solutions. So page 14 would be where you'll be sending your responses. And also another resource, I think Shamita kind of went through this very briefly earlier. So this is a 1-pager guide by Climate Action Malaysia, Kami for short, and it's a very I think easy to understand if you're already working in the climate space and you're familiar with technical jargons. But if you're not, I think you can kind of look at these key questions and also the notes and try to familiarize yourself with some of the papers that have been published. And if it's of interest to you, obviously, and then you can see whether it's in line with what you are looking for RUUPIN to have. So these are some of the cross-cutting areas that have been highlighted by Kami here. So since this was our very first time sending in recommendations for proposed bill, right? So we tried to navigate through this with the assistance of an AI tool, which is called Notebook LM. So you can probably kind of look that up. So we use this tool to generate some of the prompts that might ease our way through the document. Because not all of us are familiar with the technical space, as I mentioned, and some of us are probably new, and we might need some assistance to navigate through this. And also, we kind of went through the document. So we looked at section A, B, and C. We kind of tried to look at some of the cross-cutting topics. So what we did is, so we looked at the NREA's RUUPIN public consultation paper, and then we cross-checked it with the cross-cutting topics that Kami has mentioned here, just energy transition, mitigation, adaptation, ecosystems, critical minerals, loss and damage. And these are just some of it that is widely spoken about in national and international climate talks. And these are just the main ones, but then if there are some issues that have not been mentioned here, but you are someone who's been affected by these issues, feel free to add them in the responses. So these are the two resources that we used, as well as Notebook LM. And also, so let me just give you an example of how I looked at it, at least. So I have a background in ecology and biodiversity, and I also do climate advocacy here at UP, right? So I've been to a lot of these events, and also, as Encik Pani very importantly mentioned just now, the inclusion of respecting the rights of rights holders, as well as obtaining free, prior, informed consent in the inception right to the end of executing a carbon project, etc. So these are probably things that are less emphasized in the proposed climate change act. Also, since I'm an ecologist, right? So things related to biodiversity and all, it was less emphasized compared to the Paris Agreement. So these are some of the gaps that we noticed. And then, so what we did was we tried to translate these gaps into recommendations and also potential solutions of how the ministry can integrate these recommendations into RUUPIN. So a few important things to note is that when you're using AI, right, so it's very important to always cross-check the resources that you're referring to, so that they are fact-based and not assumption-based. And also the second thing is identify climate change related topics or areas that are of concern to you as an individual, as a member of society, or as in your workplace or in your business. And as Jaya very well, he mentioned that very well in the introductory section. So how your parts of your life are affected by climate change, and also identify if so that would be step one, and then step two would be identifying if it has been included in the RUUPIN consultation paper, and if not, add it to the response on page 14 here. So in a way that best explains your concern, so you don't have to be, I know we understand that not everybody has a technical background, so you don't have to include all the jargons that are required, but in a way that best explains your concerns. So that's pretty much it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Temoli. Thank you for the very quick and of course insightful presentation on that. Okay, so right now we're actually moving into our last session, which is actually on the question and answer session. We have just a few questions, which I think some people have also specified the speaker who would like to respond to the question. Again, I think most of the questions are quite general. I'll get to the question shortly, but I just want to mention, of course, we have shared the material in our Google Drive, which has been sent out. I think we'll put the drive here in the Facebook chat. Okay, so you can access the documents that Temoli showed, as well as documents from this session. Just give an just to have a good overview of the aspect that we're talking about today. Okay. Okay, so I only have a few questions here. Okay, I'll just go through slowly. I'll just take the last one. Okay, I'll start with the 5. Okay. Okay, I'll just take the question from Sivanison. Okay, and you asked this question. You asked the question is is flooding, is it an overstatement to say that flooding would be the biggest concern for most Malaysians, and there must be clear mitigation and adaptation plan that the climate change should address? So first of all, a short and simple answer, yes, I believe flooding in the immediate term is important aspect. But okay, let me pass this to, let me just call in some people to actually speak on this. Maybe I can ask Selvin to respond to this, at least from the urban perspective in terms of flooding.
Question again, please.
Okay, so the question was, is flooding the biggest concern for Malaysians? Okay, and then should there be clear mitigation and adaptation plans that climate change could address?
Thank you. Yes, flooding is one of the more common things in urban areas and also a lot of zones in Malaysia. But I would say it is part of the concerns, but not to say that is the most concerning. There are, of course, many other concerns that involve in the same levels of dangers. But the mitigation is the part where we, as the public and also the NGOs, I'm pretty sure many of the NGOs take part in urging the governments and also the development sectors to take into consideration of what are the ways we can prevent further flooding by carrying off of the river system and also retention system and multiple other ways that prevent flooding from happening, and also the landslides that can also cause flash flood happening in the future. The public involvement is kind of an important thing also in mitigating it in the future, urging the government to take actions. Thank you. That's all for me.
I just want to also just contribute to that. I would say, the biggest problem is, in this case, when we're talking about public consultation, it is the biggest problem that you think you and those that your loved ones or the people that you care about are going to face. So to them, that's the biggest problem. Yeah. So, for example, if you are the parent of the special child with special needs, for example, that is the biggest problem as far as you are concerned, because your job is to make sure that they are not left behind, they are not forgotten, you see. And it is important, then it is when your feedback goes up, then the policymakers collect all of this. It's their job to analyze it, their job to digest, and then to categorize, and their job will then, what is the biggest, it's not a competition, isn't it, right? It's not a competition about who's most at threat, etc. It is the whole idea of what we want, pembangunan mampan, sustainable development, is no one left behind. Yeah, so we are in a society where we are capable of catering to and protecting everyone, and we should try our best to do that. So without feedback, there's no data points, there's a forgetfulness of people who are different. And so it's really important, therefore, that what you think is really important, please articulate it. Please describe your circumstances and say why it is important for you. And if you can, articulate what would look like the best solution from your perspective.
Thanks, Jared. Since you're here, I think we have the other question which you've responded to. which is can we sue the government, the global north governments and fossil fuel companies like Shell for knowingly causing climate catastrophe?
Theoretically, that is exactly what we can do, because the government exists. We all pay our taxes, and we have people in these places to do the job. Yeah, and if they're not doing a job, now there are ways for us to actually engage and say that this isn't efficient, this isn't effective, this is misaligned, or there is a deep problem, or there is a corruption, right? Or there is a forgetfulness about my needs or our needs, the needs of my community. So we need to speak up, and we also have a job. Citizens and people who have the rights, we have the rights, that our rights cannot walk on themselves, right? We have to raise and champion our rights. So we need to also do our part, which is to learn to articulate ourselves, learn about how society generally is structured, who has the duty, so that we go to the appropriate ones, institutions, appropriate people who actually bear the duty to then tell them, hey, I think this is a problem, right? So we need to then organize ourselves, like earlier has been spoken, to do that part. So yes, theoretically, if the government refuses to listen when we engage with them constructively, then that's the why we have the courts. The courts are there to hold the government to account also. Yeah, that's why we have separation of powers. We have parliament to make the laws. We have the executive to make the political decisions. And then we have the judiciary to uphold the rule of law, right? And everyone's right to a clean, safe, and healthy environment, and to be safe against all the negative harms of climate change. It's the court has to protect and make these rights come to life also.
Thank you, Jaya.
If I may just add something on this.
Go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah, I think it's what I want to see also on the Rang Undang-Undang is also for the government to create a space or platform for people, especially citizens, to also provide sort of initiatives that can assist the government in terms of mitigation and adaptation. I think the people's or community-based solution should be also considered in this climate change dialogue. But it's the government's duty to provide that sort of platform for people to give input, and also to also maybe participate in the action. But if you don't provide that sort of recognition in this law, and I think this will be very difficult, because how does the NGO, civil society can play a role? So I think that is something also have to be mentioned here in the Rang Undang-Undang. Because if there's no provision for that to happen, then where does the civil society play the role in terms of pushing through what we call community-based solutions that might be more appropriate on very specific localities. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Adrian. I just want to mention something that which is actually the third aspect of climate action today, which is actually on loss and damage. And so this is actually with regards to flooding. So at least this is something that has been recognized globally, that for certain impacts, we cannot stop it from happening. It's already too late. And so the provision of loss and damage, people who are affected by floods, these become an important aspect. And one day it could hit any one of us, and then where do we go to for any losses that we suffered? And so there's no provision right now in terms of loss and damage. It's actually based on what the government actually believes should be appropriate, but a lot of it does not commensurate with the losses that has happened. And so we have to put that in. I think we have to put that into account for the whole aspect of impacts of climate change. Okay, I'll move on just to a next question, which is from Trash Hero in Kota Kinabalu. I think Tan Molly, you mentioned, in the sense of one thing that we see is actually a lack of focus on biodiversity, for example. Okay. And I think even at the global level, actually, if you look at it, a lot of it is focused on mitigation efforts, adaptation in terms of hazards, but very little has been done to look at the impacts on biodiversity. Okay, so Trashiro mentioned, of course, right now there's, you see crocodiles and otters around Kota Kinabalu. Whether or not it's directly or indirectly a link to climate change, that's different. But actually, at the end of the day, everything has very close linkage in terms of, forest habitat, etc. So, Temoli, what is your take on that?
Oh, I definitely like to Trash Hero.
Yes, on our Facebook Live page.
Oh, okay. Okay, amazing. So yeah, I definitely echo what they've said. Because I think when I went through the consultation paper, I think yes, Malaysia is wants to fulfill all the compliance requirements under the Paris Agreement, which I totally understand. But also, we are also party to the Convention on Biological Diversity, the CBD, and we've signed on to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. And I feel there's very less emphasis on conservation and adaptation efforts in the consultation paper. So yeah, that's definitely true. It's something the ministry has to look into for sure.
Good, thanks. Anyone got any feedback on that question? If not, I'll move to the next one. Okay, this is a question also by Stephen Nason. Okay, so this is directed to Jayao and Selvan. What is your take on urban development projects that have been done without proper planning that are affecting many of the older housing areas in Selangor and KL? Do you see a misalignment of priorities from the government and local councils where projects are approved without carefully assessing the environmental impacts? Okay, I think this is not only an issue in Selangor and KL, but probably throughout Malaysia. But of course, from this aspect, we've already faced these things many times, but right now, putting in the aspect of climate change, for example, flooding, etc. What is your take on that? Jayao and then Selvan?
Very quickly, I think it is a deep and serious problem, and there are many facets to the thing. So one is the EIA, the laws around how EIA is done. That really needs to be reformed. Public consultation needs to be improved significantly. Not just by tokenism, just doing something, then it's tick boxing, and then after that, okay, thank you very much for all your feedback, and then after that, go into the black box, and no one's your representatives are not at the table, and then a decision is made and you don't know how. So you don't know what is the cost benefit analysis, or sometimes even before that, if we go backwards a little bit, sometimes you also don't know how to engage because you not enough access to information. You don't know that actually the nature of the project, or public consultation is only open to those near enough. But hey, sometimes proximity is not just on physical. Sometimes it's more complex than that. Now, there's open information issues. So we also urgently need improved access to information. Sometimes also freedom to actually engage. Sometimes you stand in front of the project, then you get arrested really because you're trespassing. So there are these kinds of safety. We need to be safe to actually do kind of protect our rights. So there's no silver bullet. But I think the silver bullet for this kind of thing is a strong and active citizenry and a vibrant civil society. And so earlier on, speakers talk about getting organized. Now, when you organize, then you're a civil society group. That's what we mean when we say you get organized, then you put, hey, what I know, hey, what I hear, a rumor is this, oh, I've done a company search. I think who are the directors behind this? You get together, you get organized. Then you can sharpen your questions, and you can then find out who is responsible, who should we speak with.
Yeah, Selvan, any quick thought on that?
Yeah, Jaya said it very clearly already. Just to make it more easier, we need to urge more involvement of the public whenever there is opportunity through the process of environmental impact assessment, or whenever the NGOs bring up the issues to the public hearing. We need to support and urge the governments and also the developers in order to rethink and relook at the projects. And we have seen some small changes in previous developments. For example, the Tolak Tambah project in Penang, it used to be three different islands that was planned to be built, and now they changed it to one. So changes are happening, just that we need to put more more serious approach into letting them know, hey, people are affected, we are impacted. So the changes will happen. We need to put more effort.
Okay, thanks, sir. Okay, I just want to touch another question here, which is someone has asked Liu Zhenzheng about the expansion of data centers, etc. But not only data centers, but also other types of projects which invariably lead to immense use of resources, electricity and water. Okay, from the bill itself, this new bill, do you think there would be either Jaya or someone else? Do you think there would be certain types of provisions actually to be imposed on industries which either are polluting or for example, energy intensive like data centers, which will unfortunately result in high emissions of greenhouse gas emissions? And will there be conflict with our economic goals?
Me, so I guess
Yes, yes.
sometimes a lot of so-called climate action, sometimes we say like, oh, we need this big project. So here the data one, okay lah, is us trying to attract more foreign direct investment. I think this is just a normal situation of investment that will have impacts, and we're concerned about it. So the usual kind of clarifications and the usual kind of concerns need to be approached. Sometimes there are other type of we are seeing now a lot of development, say in the name of combating climate. So it's a balancing of different types of interest. Yeah. So for example, like, well, we are expanding recycling plants, but then are we importing overseas plastic waste and then recycle here and make money, but then we're polluting, right? So so I think again the key issue comes back to the cost benefit analysis needs to be collectively done by everyone who are going to be who are affected, right? So if the cost benefit analysis is very narrow, where we only talk about, let's say, make how much money, and then we will fix the pollution later, then I think having a strong civil society, then we can say, hey, you are forgetting about this, you're forgetting about that. So different expertise really helps, right? So some people have the expertise to start to quantify, right, nature. Others have other kinds of expertise. So all this coming together is really, really important, because otherwise there's only one narrative about the project. It means it's just good, all thumbs up and cheer, when we're not looking at the different facets of it. That is the old kind of dumb development, and we want to be more intelligent. So anyway, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I have one question here with regards to data. Of course, access to data on climate change or climate projections for Malaysia. And someone has asked, Meme Law has asked, how can the Met Department play a bigger role in highlighting climate issues, etc. I think we're still at a very early stage, but for the speakers here, I mean, when you talk about data, climate data, how difficult has it been for you all to access real climate data for the country right now? And I think that's an important aspect of our, even in terms of transparency and accountability as part of our new bill. Anyone can answer this in terms of data. How difficult is it, or how easy it is to actually access climate change data?
Can I just start first? Just
can. Go ahead, Adrian, and then
Yeah.
Shamita. Quick one, please.
Okay. So I think one of the most challenging part of getting data is not just accessing data itself, but having a reliable and disaggregated data, because it's so general that it's very hard to use that data meaningfully to come up with a clear strategy. For example, for indigenous people, we don't know when you even talk about poverty and all these things. So if it's not segregated in terms of gender and also the age group, it's very difficult. So that's why it is not just getting general data, but how reliable and disaggregated it is. So I think the key is like we have to start coming up with not just reliable data, but also disaggregated data that can really help in terms of planning and a better strategy for us. Yeah.
Shamita, you wanted to say something? Please go ahead.
Yes, I was just going to say, echoing someone's point here about how Malaysia does have good climate data, is we don't have data forms or data share platforms. We need this in like our health apps. Well, there's a lot of
Yep.
issues with privacy and how data is used. But also I think we need to like look beyond traditional forms of data and see. That's where I think the RUUPIN is kind of useful in the sense that it can collect data almost from us, looking at our own kind of informal experiences of dealing with whatever it is we do deal with in terms of the climate, and also looking towards non-traditional forms of data from like indigenous communities, etc., to make it more comprehensive as well.
Okay, thank you. So thank you. Actually, we're already towards the end of our session. It's already 6:26. Before we end, we have a few slides to show in terms of how to provide feedback to the government. I'll just go through, flip through very quickly. Maybe Debbie, you want to share the slides? Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will just quickly go through this without getting into much detail. Okay, and so the first slide is actually, first of all, the first thing they need to do is, of course, to review the RUUPIN consultation paper. It's still at a draft stage, and it's still, it contains some of the major elements. Jared has gone through it. Okay. So right now, all these this consultation paper and of course the submission forms that Shamita has shown earlier, and also Shamita and Tenmoli has shown earlier, is in our Google Drive folder. I think we'll put the link in the chat now, and you can access these files. Okay, number one. Next slide. Okay, so if you go into this is some of the files that you see lah. You'll see the consultation paper, and of course the second one is actually in BM, and then there is the submission form, a blank submission form, to be submitted to NRES, and then we have another form with some suggestions in terms of what could be submitted. Okay, so you can access this drive and actually download all these materials, and then you can start preparing either individually or as a group. So it's good to actually put these questions forward so that actually even if you get no response, at least there's some documentation in terms of what has been the response from the general public. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so you see this already in terms of the consultation paper, which helps gives you an understanding on the purpose of the Act, etc., and all the different types of elements within the document. Okay, next slide. Okay, so what you can do is actually to download the blank form, okay, to your PCs, and then you can fill it up. Okay, the document provides a possible, and then the second document provides some possible responses. Okay, which you can also use. Whether you want to copy and paste or whether you want to improve upon it and put in your own say, you can go ahead. Okay, next slide. Okay, so this is actually the form that you need to fill up. I think our presenters earlier have showed in terms of section A, section B, and section C. Okay, and of course you may provide your name, your designation, organization, etc., and then type it all in. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so this is actually just some samples in terms of how it can be filled up in terms of general comments or specifically related to the different sections of the Act, introduction, the principles of proposed actions under section C. Okay. Okay, and then once you have completed the form, then you can either email it directly to the Ministry of Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability. Okay, you can send it to their main email. You need to CC it to the RUUPIN. This is actually being done right now by the consultancy Deloitte. You can CC them into that email, and of course put in your subject as RUUPIN consultation submission, your name and your organization. Okay, if you want, of course, you can also send by mail, but of course, I believe it's best to send by email. Okay. 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 Right now, of course, there is the deadline for the submission is it's coming very soon. It's on the 3rd of November 2024. So we have roughly just over a week or so to actually submit. Many of the CEOs have already submitted a request for extension, but we have not gotten any feedback in terms of whether or not this deadline will be extended. And in terms of confidentiality, of course, if you wish your name or any part of your response to remain confidential, then please indicate in your submission. Okay. Okay, so I think that is the end of today's session. So it's already 6:30 sharp. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who has joined in on the Facebook Live. We have nearly 50 people who are joining there. And of course, next all the speakers who have actually going to time out today. We are happy to have organized this session. Of course, if you would like to contact us, please feel free to contact any one of us regards to this consultation paper. And of course, we also can help in actually forming your responses to the Ministry of Natural Resources on this proposed climate change bill. Okay. So again, thank you everyone, all the speakers. I hope that everyone has actually gotten a little bit of learning experience today. And so it's 6:30 right now. I think I'll leave you all for the evening. And so thank you and have a good weekend.